All right, I'm in frame. We'll just start, I guess. Hi guys, this is a different type of video for me because really since I've been back doing YouTube, I really haven't told my story. But this is basically the day I realized I was slowly being paralyzed. I guess that's how you would call it. I mean, I don't even know if this is going to be on YouTube. I guess the best way to start is from the beginning. So you need to know a little bit of background, and that is I have cerebral palsy, so I already have difficulties with mobility. I live in an accessible apartment, which thankfully I was moved into at the time. But even having a disability already, I didn't think this was going to happen, and in this way. With my specific disability and cerebral palsy in general, they say, once the damage is done, it's done, because it's typically a brain injury. And I can go into more details about specific CP things in a different video, but basically my parents and I knew I was going to walk differently, and maybe need a wheelchair at some point, but we didn't expect this to happen. We knew that I was going to maybe eventually need a chair, so I got one, and at the time this was going on, I was using it for longer distances and for just kind of as like my walking disability sign. It was about three years ago-ish. I think I was 26, 27. I was working at the time, and basically most of my job took place on Fridays. I had to compile a report and then send that report to different distributors who would then use it and the information within it to create parts of reports for things across Canada. That's the easiest way to sort of explain it. So one thing you have to know about my city and province in general is it gets really, really cold, like minus 30 cold, minus 30 Celsius, I think is like minus 22 Fahrenheit, and it gets so cold that we have like wind chill warnings, and sometimes they'll even say like do not go out without like your toque, like your hat it's a toque, a toque and gloves, because anything exposed to the elements will freeze in a matter of minutes. You know how some places will get heat warnings, like don't be out in the sun for this long? Yeah, we get cold warning. At this specific place, there was the option where if it was a certain temperature or like if there was just a blizzard and you wanted to work from home and you had your stuff, you could say, I'm working from home today. And that was not abnormal. Like everyone did it, especially in the winter. I couldn't, because I needed the bigger screens and I needed access to the fax machine and a bunch of other things. I was at work late. Normally I work probably 8:30 to 4:30, and then on Fridays my shift would like vary. I would always start at 8:30, but sometimes I'd be out of there at 6, sometimes I'd be out of there at 7, sometimes I'd be out of there at 5. So yeah, it varied. And this was the dead of winter, and I finished the report and I'm ready to go home. And it was blustering outside. It was really cold, and I always dressed my upper body, but dressing my lower body for the cold has always been harder, because I want to look professional, right? And have like, either on Fridays you could wear jeans, or I didn't want to be wearing like sweatpants or snow pants all day because I have a hard time like removing them. On this day, I'd worked overtime, and I think it was like 7, but it was dark out, like really, really dark. And my accessible transit had driven me there, and they were gonna drive me home. And I usually take accessible transit in the wintertime because like it just makes sense. So that day I went outside about 10 minutes before my ride would be there, because I wanted to make sure they could see me. You don't really know what kind of drivers you'll get. They're supposed to come in and get you, but sometimes they don't, especially in the cold, because they don't want to get out because it's that cold. I went out there, which is something I would often do, and I had my AirPods in, which I live with AirPods all the time, music playing. So I had gloves on. I think, yeah, I was just ready to go home. The accessible driver came and I went home, and I realized once I got home, like, oh crap, I froze my legs, which is not an abnormal thing. For me, it happens quite a bit, where, like I was saying, we have like wind chill warnings that say like, okay, you know, don't leave anything exposed, and my legs were not like exposed. It's not like I was wearing a skirt or shorts or anything. I was just wearing like dress pants or jeans. It was and has always been like a really hard part of my body for me to like keep warm. But always I would freeze my legs, and eventually they would come back to life. Sometimes it would take 4 hours or 6 hours, but they would eventually get circulation back in them and I could feel them again. So I got home and realized I froze my legs, didn't really think about it. Okay, so it was Friday night. I don't know, watched Netflix or, you know, did my Friday night, and I had an attendant who, she comes up once in a while, but she just helped me, you know, get myself into bed, because with my legs not being able to feel them, I was like, okay, yeah, I need some assistance here. I went to bed. I slept really, really well. And Saturday morning, I got up and I went to kind of sit myself up and put like kind of pressure through my body on my legs, right? And I couldn't. Like, I could not feel them at all. And then I like actually physically felt them, and they were still cold. And I didn't understand why, because I had made sure that night that I, wrapped them in like heated blanket and everything else like that. It was on a timer, so it wasn't gonna overheat. And they still were not like, they were just not there. It was kind of like they were just not there. There's no way to really explain it. I was kind of frightened, but I also was like, well, maybe it just needs a couple more hours. Like, who knows? And Saturdays, I don't mind like spending some extra time in bed, so whatever. But Saturday came and went, Sunday came and went, and it was very strange, but it took me a week to get some semblance of feeling back in my legs, and I have not gotten the full feeling back. I have no idea. I don't really know how this happened, but on that day, or from that whole accident, I guess you could say, I lost probably 50% of my mobility. And I am so thankful that I have my apartment and I had the chair at the time, and I'm already somewhat, familiar with accessible transit. But at the same time, even though like you're going to eventually lose, some mobility, you don't expect for it to happen all at once, and you don't expect for it to happen over something so small that you would normally not even like think twice about. Like, since then, yes, I have frozen my legs a couple of times, and I've found some different leggings that seem to help. They look like a legging on the outside, but they have like a really furry, warm inside, and that seems to be helping some. But after that initial losing of probably 50% of my mobility, over the years then, the winters, they become kind of that much harder, and I notice more in the winter sort of how much mobility I will lose this year, whereas how it used to be, in the winter I would lose mobility, but in the spring it would come back. Now every year it's kind of like the first cold snap of the year, I wonder, like, how much mobility am I gonna lose this year? So I don't think I will ever lose like all of my mobility. I hope to still be able to ambulate around my house at least a little bit. Like right now I'm at a point where around my house I can still move and get around. But if I'm standing for too long, or if, depending on the day, I may have to use the chair around the house. But I would like, I don't know, I guess I would like to just almost stay where I'm at, you know? If it got to the point where I could only do transfers, I would be okay with that. I mean, I say that now, but there's a whole, it's like a processing point, I guess, where when you don't expect that 50% of your mobility is just going to be gone in the space of one day, like the whole readjustment to quote unquote normal, it might happen a little bit quicker. Like, you know, in your head, like, okay, I'm already set up for this. I you know, this is not in a physical sense a big deal, but it's also a huge deal because all of a sudden how you do things has to change like immediately. And I had like the span of a weekend to figure out how I was going to do this, because of course I went to work for Monday through Friday, so they didn't necessarily know like all that was going on, because why would I tell them? Like, it's not their fault, it's not my fault. I already have all the accommodations I need at work, and I have the chair, so nothing should change. But it was hard for a good year to year and a half, and now I still, like I say, lose mobility in the winter. I lose sensation in my legs like all the time. So like, even though I can still walk, like my body is still able to walk, but my body doesn't recognize that my legs like aren't there really. So like, when my body is quote unquote walking, I could easily trip over something because if I'm not looking down, I don't like feel it until I'm like literally clambering on top of it. So it just gets dangerous for me to be walking, because again, I can walk into walls and smack into things and not know until I'm like on top of it. But the straw that kind of broke the camel's back in terms of whether I should start using my chair more in life or not was for like 25 years I always fell forward, and I could catch myself. Well, now I fall backwards, and that is super hard because you don't know where you're falling, and or what you're falling into. So plus it's really hard on your tailbone and your lower back. And I've had a couple of falls backwards that have sort of sent me back a week or week and a half. So that was when I sort of had to say to myself, and I still have to say to myself on a daily basis, like, okay, you should be using your chair, or like, you've walked enough today, you need to be using your chair, because a good 70% of me is still like, oh, I know how to do this. This is how I used to do it, right? But how you used to do it doesn't always work now. So it gets hard. But like anything, you adjust to it and you roll with the punches, and you take it in stride because you really have no other choice. That is my video for today, and that is how I am slowly being paralyzed. And so every winter now, I wonder like how I'm gonna come out the other side in the spring. But it's just life, and I'm still going to make the best of it, and it's not gonna stop me from doing things. But yeah, that is my story. I just have frozen my legs one too many times. And so I will see you in my next upload, guys. If you like this and you would like to see more of me, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because you never know when I'm going to be posting a video. And I will see you in the next one, guys. Keep pushing.